WNST win for the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday afternoon over the Buffalo Bills. I wasn't sure I could count that high, Luke Jones, but certainly for the Ravens, for offense, for excitement, for defense, for all three phases of a game. And again, they were playing Nathan Peterman, so, I don't want to get crazy, and they had some blowouts last year, early in the year, and certainly some shutouts early in the year last year. But this is the kind of start you want to see from a football team that you expect to win 10, 11, or 12 games.
Well, it comes down to this. I mean, we can talk all we want about the Buffalo Bills being terrible. And look, I said over the weekend when I made my 5 predictions for Sunday that I thought Buffalo was one of the worst 5 teams in the NFL, and they sure looked like it Sunday. But that being said, you don't blow teams out frequently in the NFL. And think back to, even though you mentioned some of these games last year that the Ravens did win in convincing fashion, even though I don't know if any of those performances were as impressive all the way around like this one was on Sunday, but think back to some of those games that they were able to slog their way through it. I mean, even the Indianapolis game in Week 16, the Colts were terrible last year, and the Ravens were functioning at a much higher level offensively at that point in the season. Very similar weather, rainy, miserable, windy, and the Ravens slogged their way through that one. Now, a win is a win, and if the Ravens had won by 10 points on Sunday, you'd still be saying that, and you'd be saying, well, the weather made things difficult. Well, it didn't make things difficult for the Ravens on Sunday because Joe Flacco and the passing game, I mean, they threw the ball 32 times in the first half and threw it with a ton of success. The defense held Buffalo without a first down in the first half.
It was old school, right? I mean, it was Ray Lewis-y, sort of smash. And them giving the points up, that's no small thing because I'm pretty sure Suggs and Weddle and those guys, Jefferson, they're on the sideline saying, hey, we want a goose egg here. I mean, it was worthy of a goose egg. It really was.
It was, but I'll say this. I think it was almost a blessing in disguise that they didn't get the shutout and Buffalo was able to score 3 points, because I think the Ravens were a little more inclined to sub out some of their vets. I mean, keep in mind, this football team plays on Thursday night in Cincinnati. It's going to be a tough battle against a Bengals team that I think might be improved from where they were.
I watched a lot of that game, by the way, so I'm going to have a lot to say about that. We're going to have a lot of Cincinnati guests here this week. And, I disappeared from you in the third quarter. I said, that Bengals game's close. I watched the fourth quarter of that game. They looked like a team that had a heart, quite frankly. They sort of pulled away at the end in a way that they didn't have to on the road. So, and they had to play starters to the end. They had to play a tough game. The Ravens kind of had a 5th or 6th preseason game, however you want to look at it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is when you only have 46 guys active on game days, you can't sub out everyone. I mean, the Ravens only had 2 reserve offensive linemen. So, they put Orlando Brown Jr. in. They put Bradley Bozeman in. They subbed out guys like Terrell Suggs and C.J. Mosley, and, of course, Joe Flacco, who only played 4 plays in the second half. I mean, that's just incredible to think that. You rarely see starting quarterbacks in the NFL get pulled that early. But it was 40-0. I mean, it was just...
Yeah, we were wondering if we were ever going to see Lamar Jackson. And look, Flacco's been here 10 years. How many times have they subbed out Flacco, even in blowouts? Not very often. I mean, we did not see a whole lot of the Matt Schaub, Tyrod Taylor. A lot of years, most people in the sport didn't know who the backup was. Kind of like Peyton Manning. He just played all the time, right? Or Brett Favre.
Right. I mean, you'll see, when there's a blowout, you'll see the backup come in for the final 5 minutes, the final 7 minutes of action, but... For this to occur as early as it did really speaks to how well the Ravens played and how abysmal the Buffalo Bills were. But I think that's something just to keep in mind as they get closer to Thursday night playing Cincinnati. And we'll get into it at some point over the course of this week, how difficult it is to win those Thursday night road games. But when you play this well and you're able to sub out some of your key vets, and also, and I think there's a long-term gain to this, you were able to get some of your rookies. They got their feet wet, no pun intended. They were able to play some real NFL snaps. So it wasn't high stakes. I mean, they were playing in a blowout, but still a different animal than just playing in the preseason. So I think there were some good things to kind of branch off that you could talk about from this game. But it's one game. We understand that. I mean, the Ravens have played well in the past, even years where they ended up not being all that good. But this one, just the all-around feel to it, I mean, it was emphatic. I mean, I was kind of thinking late in the second half as I was watching the clock tick down. I was trying to think of most impressive opening day performances.
They beat the snot out of Tampa, down in Tampa. Maybe 06, one of the really good Billick years.
Steve McNair year, yeah.
I mean, I remember it was 105 degrees that day. My wife and I were down there, and they just beat the snot. They looked like a really good team that day, and that was different. It was a road win over a pretty competent Tampa team, as I remember it being. It wasn't an awful. It was a Chucky team. It was a Gruden team at that point. So it wasn't like deep. And then they beat the snot out of Tampa a couple years ago with Flacco in more recent times as well. But that wasn't that wasn't an opener. But these kinds of wins, I mean. Gosh, dude, 23 years of this. I mean, there have been less than 10 games sort of kind of like this in either direction. I mean, even going to Wembley last year with Jacksonville. The Ravens haven't been slobber-knockered like that very often either.
It really does speak to where this team has been. Even when they've been really, really good, rarely do things come easy for them. But I was thinking back to the season-opening win over Pittsburgh in 2011. Remember, they moved right down the field. Flacco threw the touchdown to Anquan Bolden. Sunday's opening drive made me think of that a little bit. I think that drive was a little quicker. This one was not methodical, but it had some more meat to it as far as what they were able to get done. And keep in mind, they also had the Alex Lewis penalty. They had the fumble. It was just a really, really impressive first drive. But this one reminded me a little bit of that, just how emphatic it was, how good it was all the way around. Reminded me a little bit of that 2011 opener. Now, Pittsburgh was a much, much, much better team than what this Buffalo team is most likely going to be. I mean, this might be the worst team in the NFL when it's all said and done. But that said, again, we can point to so many examples these last few years where the Ravens have even played bad teams at home, and they've typically won them, but there's something difficult about it. Either the offense isn't clicking, or the defense has some hiccups.
Or we have something to bitch about on a Monday morning, right? I don't know what you could complain about the next 3 days around here, literally, right?
I mean, are there things you could point to from a constructive standpoint that they need to get better? Yeah, of course. They didn't run the ball particularly well, especially in the first half. I mean, but they threw the ball so well, it was almost one of those things where, why force the issue? I mean, you're throwing the ball up and down the field. Joe Flacco's pretty darn accurate overall. He even had a few drops mixed in there that would have made his numbers even better. So, you can talk about the run game. Other than that, I mean, Kenneth Dixon got banged up at the very end of the game. I thought it was a little interesting that they had Ronnie Stanley in the game rather than putting James Hurst at left tackle. But again, these aren't things you're mad about. They're just, it's something you're trying to find to say, well, it wasn't 100% perfect. And you can go back and look at different things, and I'm sure John Harbaugh, and actually maybe not, because they have such a quick turnaround that they really don't have a whole lot of time to do much self-correcting as far as watching this tape. They're on to Cincinnati, to borrow a phrase I heard once or twice. But I think you're absolutely right from the standpoint of when you win a football game 47-3 at any level, let alone the NFL, where it's just that margin, that talent gap just isn't that dramatic between teams. But when you just completely overwhelm a team in all phases like that, I mean, how can you not feel good? And I think it's going to be interesting with this quick turnaround because of the way the Ravens played so well. Is it to their benefit that they have a quick turnaround, that you aren't going to sit around for 2 days and think about how good you are? Or because you're so consumed with the preparation, knowing that you're playing another football game here in the next few days, maybe it does allow you to move past it. I'm sure you can find examples of both. And
well, that's a difficult assignment coming up here. This is next 3-4 days. This isn't, this is a hard thing to do, to go to Cincinnati and win on short rest. I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
the odds are stacked well against them.
Sure. I mean, certainly the Bengals are going to be favored, and they should be. I mean, that's the way it works when you're the home team on a Thursday night. But for what it is, one game, and Terrell Suggs was adamant about this. I mean, he over and over in his post-game press conference kept saying, yeah, it was good. Yeah, certainly we like to play well, and we played well in all three phases, but it's one game. And, that's spoken like a true 16-year veteran right there. And, Flacco and others alluded to it as well. I didn't get the sense. I didn't get the sense that this team was overly satisfied with what they did. They were happy to get a win. Certainly you want to be 1-0. Certainly you want to play well. And I think one thing that Flacco talked about, and you and I talked about this before training camp and the preseason even started, with the offense being as scrutinized, as criticized, as maligned as it's been, and Flacco specifically, and some of it justified, others, other aspects of it not as justified in my opinion. I thought it was important for them to clearly have a good preseason, have a good summer. They did that. Flacco healthy being the most prominent factor, I think, that's working in the Ravens' favor offensively. But I think it was significant for this team to go out and put up a bunch of points and move the ball through the air. Yeah, they didn't run the ball very well, but I still think that's something that will be a strength of theirs eventually. Keep in mind this offensive line, because Yanda didn't play in the preseason, the first live game action they've had really in a long time when you're talking about, ever for this combination of five. So there might be some growing pains there, but for this offense collectively to play as well as it did, I think it's important from a confidence, from a mojo standpoint, for them to do what they did. Doesn't mean that if they go and get shut out Thursday night, then we'll be talking about it from a negative standpoint again. And, but we're talking about one game for what it is, understanding the opponent, understanding you have 15 more of these. I think there is some extra meaning to this offense playing as well as it did, if for nothing else, just to have the confidence that I think has started to grow in the spring and summer with them practicing well, and even defensive players on this Ravens team who have been so used to dominating the offense in practices over the years. And I just covered my 10th training camp. Can't say other than maybe the Bolden years, I can't really think of too many times where the offense would get the best of the defense very often. But it was much more even this summer. And there's two ways to look at that. You could say, well, the offense is better, or maybe the defense is a little worse. I don't know. I mean, you don't know until you go out and face an opponent for real. Even if it's not a great opponent, I think there's absolutely value to playing as well as they did. And I think there's much more confidence now going into week 2. Here it comes, before ready or not, it's coming in a couple of days. More important for this team to feel good about itself, this offense to feel good about itself, knowing they're going to go on the road short week against a team that I think has a chance to be, to make some noise in the AFC North before it's all said and done.
Luke Jones and I will be in Cincinnati, as Earl Weaver once said. All of our WNST programming and our sponsors and the people that help us feed our families and keep us alive in our 21st year now here at WNST.net, including Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast with the coffee, and the ROFO Rewards. You want to get the ROFO Rewards card or the app onto your phone when you're pumping your gas. You get your fried chicken, you get your Western fries. Add your points up, you get it for free. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. And I'm going to be challenging Justin Tucker to a Baltimore Ease competition later on. The Modell Lyric, also our partners. Check out their website. John Cusack bringing a screening of Say Anything. And John Cusack, very interesting cat. He's coming to town this week. You want to check that out at modell-lyric.com. Don't forget Steely Dan on October the 11th, as well as Kansas. And I've had the violinist David Ragsdale from Kansas on with me. You'll find that out in the buy at Toyota.com audio vault. Kansas at the Modell Lyric on November the 24th. Also, Sporticulture. I got my beautiful Ravens flower here. I guess at some point I'll get my Bengals flower in here. Terps now at 2-0. You can order beautiful flowers just like the one on our YouTube and our WNS TV Live. This is all from Sporticulture. They smell beautiful. My cat wants at them. But you can get them for your favorite team. Ship them to your friends. Sport Eye Culture. That's sporticulture.com. It's local, but you can send them anywhere and everywhere. Also, our friends at the Boathouse in Canton. My wife and I got to get back down there. It's where the Bay Cafe was many, many moons ago. It's been the Boathouse in Canton now for a couple of years. They're open in the winter. They're open on Tuesday nights for Taco Tuesdays as well. Make sure you stop down and see them at the Dock Bar in full swing. Even my boy Eddie Lauer plays down at the Boathouse in Canton from time to time. Also dog-friendly and open all winter with the fantastic shrimp salad. Ship happens at the Boathouse Canton. Luke Jones can be found at Baltimore Luke out at WNST.net, as well at Luke at WNST.net with his unique brand of comedy when the score is, I think it was only 40-3 at that time, Luke, that you were putting out various memes and fun. And look, it's all fun and games when you get through it and it's this easy, right? But I look at the game in more of a big picture that, yeah, it's a win, yeah, it's a big win, but more than that, a lot of players are going home and to your point, feeling good about themselves. Now, what that means for Eric Weddle and Terrell Suggs and Joe Flacco, the veteran guys, probably different than Tavon Young. Maybe even different than a John Brown, who's a little bit of a young veteran, but having some success here for Snead. Same thing, where they're a bigger part of this team than they were in Arizona, than they were in New Orleans. Crabtree's been a bigger part of some of these teams than what he's actually produced in some cases, maybe in Oakland as well, as San Francisco. But I think for everyone to touch the ball, for Nick Boyle to get some confidence, for Max Williams to get some confidence, for Andrews playing in his first game to get some confidence, to your point, Zeus Jr. got some confidence during the game, and there were mistakes as well, but everybody can look at this and say, I did something good on Sunday, right?
Pretty much. I mean, 6 different players scored touchdowns. All 3 of the veteran newcomers at the wide receiver position caught touchdowns. So right off the bat, we always know about wide receivers. I mean, Michael Crabtree, he had a reputation elsewhere. How much of that was fair? How much of it wasn't? That's up to the beholder. I mean, certainly, I'm sure the truth probably falls somewhere in the middle with some of those, what happened with him at the end in Oakland. So it's nice to see him involved, and you don't have one of these guys going home and one catch for 6 yards, and the other 2 guys, 4 other guys catch touchdowns, or however it plays out. I mean, you can think of all the different scenarios that could possibly happen. So it's great to see that many involved. And Flacco talked about it. I mean, no one had a big day offensively as far as skill position players. I mean, Buck Allen caught 5 passes. He led them in receptions. Willie Snead led them in receiving yards with 49. I mean, no one had a huge day, but the collective effort, the sum of the parts, ended up being a really big day for this offense.
And by the way, I want to bring that up on the receiving thing, because you and I, before the game, put a little pencil to paper. I went old school on your notebook, and I wrote initials and yards. And I'm telling you what, and I guess I didn't say it loud enough to you, and I didn't go on the internet and scream it, although my numbers are up there. You can check it out on Facebook, wherever you are. But I don't know that they're going to have a 1,000-yard receiver, but they might have 6 guys that are 700-800 yard. I mean, literally, it might look like that, and that's kind of what Sunday looked like. It looked like 5 or 6 guys getting 40, 50, 60 yards, which adds up to 300 yards the same, right?
Right. And, I mean, I think the reality of where this team's going to be, and just because they played well on Sunday doesn't mean that I suddenly think this is going to be a top 5 offense. I think a realistic expectation for this group, assuming they stay healthy, is to be top half of the NFL, which would be market improvement from where they've been the last couple of years. So I don't want to, I'm not saying that as an underwhelming commentary. I'm saying that as that would be really big when I consider that I think this defense has the potential to be a top 5 defense, and their special teams will be up there among the absolute best, as they usually are. But that combination, if this offense can be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, 14, 13, 12, somewhere in that top half, cracking into the top half of the offensive rankings in the NFL. You do that, you have a top 5 defense, you have a top 2 or 3 special teams. That's probably going to get you in the playoffs, assuming.
And you're not going to miss kicks. You're going to make kicks. I mean, that's the other thing. We have a guy that makes kicks. He puts points up, and that's different than half the places in the league for sure, right?
Right. So if you can toe that line between being efficient and having just enough of those explosives that Brian Billick used to always talk about with the 2000 rate, you can mix in enough of those big plays and be efficient, be good on third down, not commit too many penalties. If you can do those things as an offense, and certainly even though Sunday didn't bear that out, this team is going to depend on running the football effectively. I don't think the formula is for Joe Flacco to be throwing the ball 50-plus times, as he was on pace to do in Sunday's game before he was pulled. And clearly, if he had played longer, they weren't going to be throwing the ball at that same rate. But I think we understand what he does best.
Well, it would have been a 400-yard day for him, right? I mean, had he stayed in there.
Yeah, I mean, he was on pace for it, sure.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be very careful here just because this one game to suddenly change expectations. I think the formula is going to be to run the ball effectively and to have a more efficient and hopefully a little more explosive passing game. And that's where John Brown's going to come in. That's where, someone like Chris Moore as a number 4 receiver could come into play. Having Hayden Hurst to kind of be that seam beater down the middle of the field. If you have those types of guys, then you have a chance to be more explosive and score more points and be more of a threat and not be in this mode where we're just going to manage the game and barely do enough not to mess it up for our defense. I think Sunday was an extreme example because they're not going to score 40. I bet money they're not going to score 47 points again this year, and I'd probably win that bet. But that said, doesn't mean that they can't be very productive and find themselves being better than most of the offenses in this league. And if they can do that, like I said, if they can get into that 15 to 12 range as far as their most offensive categories, I think this team will be in the playoffs, and I think this team will have a chance to make some noise come January, even if it plays out that way. But you have to stay healthy. You have to keep putting in the work. Certainly, they need to run the ball better than they did the few opportunities that they had when this game was kind of sort of still a game, which wasn't very long on Sunday. But overall, you just really like what you see, and I think if nothing else, besides being 1-0, besides winning the game and not being in a position like Pittsburgh, you tied Cleveland or something weird happening like that, you like the fact when you play this well in the first one. It's just like opening day in baseball. There's always, when you're 1-0 and no matter what happened the previous year, what happened in spring training, there's always that moment where you daydream about what's possible. And I think the very similar feeling after Sunday's game. I didn't predict the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm still not predicting them to win the Super Bowl. But when you see a team play at that level, even if it's against a crummy opponent, it does make you take some pause and say, when they're really firing on all cylinders, it's pretty impressive, the final product that we saw on Sunday.
Had I tweeted out a score before the game, I would have gone 38-13. I thought the Ravens were going to win. I thought they were going to win big. I think they're going to be a good football team. I've been very bullish on that ever since Canton, quite frankly. So we've been 5-6 weeks into this. Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net, sharing that unique blend of comedy and football and spice on game days. We're both headed off to Cincinnati and the Queen City for chili, flatulence, and Thursday Night Football. All of it brought to you by our friends at King Discount Liquors, lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get on out to Rosedale and give the King a ring. See my man Johnny Bev and the King All-Stars. I picked my wife up some Irish stout over the weekend, so that was all good. Also brought to you by Fremont Mortgage. We're doing a live show with Alex Lewis next Tuesday night. Hold your calendar. That's next Tuesday night after sort of the mini-bye and before we get ready for the Denver Broncos. We're giving you more details on that. All of our swabbings and live shows brought to you by Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. You need Carl Delmont and our friends at Fremont. Buying, selling, thinking about it. Go to Fremont.com and learn more about that. Also brought to you by Charles Newsonoff and Sons. Since 1923, true love comes in all shapes and sizes, and there's something for everybody's budget at Charles Newsonoff and Sons. Go see Sydney over there. They also buy gold, and they're in Parkville. And you can find them on the web at charlesnewsonoff.com. Let's grow old together. Also, our friends at Cole Roofing. I'm going to be here on Thursday, and I'm giving a shout-out to anybody out there with a charitable cause, a community organization, something good you're doing in the world to raise money. Throw me a note, nasty at WNST.net. We'll make you a guest on Thursday. Promote your cause. I'm promoting Flip Flop Festivus this month. We're promoting our There Goes My Hero event next month. We're promoting our very own swabbing we're going to be doing next Tuesday with Alex Lewis of the Ravens. I'm going to have him speak some German, too. There'll be more details coming later in the week. Hold next Tuesday night for that. Luke Jones will be with us as well for that. Luke, big picture on this, and I was going to ask Weddle about it. And someone, sort of maybe Pete Gilbert, somebody sort of kind of did. But I want to ask your thoughts on this, man, because you and I have gotten together and talked Ravens football at length, for 30 minutes to an hour and a half, 2, 3, 4 times a week, every week since January. Even in the softer weeks, we've done Ravens reports and stories and comings and goings and all of that. And from where this team was at, let's just say, the Steve Bisciotti presser that you and I watched from Minnesota because he didn't want to answer our questions. And from that moment to ripping the team apart that was last year's team and piecing this year's team together, I look at Weddle to be an interesting cat because he signed up for this. He came from a place where, let's be honest, the ownership was a joke. They're playing in that bandbox out there in Carson now. And he signed up here, as much, wanted to make money and do all that stuff, but he wanted to win. And he bought into them wanting to make the team better and having the ability, the intelligence, the resources, the maneuverability, the deftness, the attractiveness to the Michael Crabtrees and the Sneeds and anybody else that would come in here. And as I see it right now, I like the bus I'm riding on. I like being a Raven fan in 2018 right now for this season right here. And I think for even a guy like Weddle to have signed up for this is the promise and the commitment. And look, I'll bring the baseball team up, and whenever we go to a football game, we drive through the baseball parking lot. So they're there, and they lost their 101th, first, 101, whatever you would say, 101st, 1th. That's my Dundalk coming out, Luke. But this team regroups. Yes, it was disappointing. Yes, it was awful. Yes, we're shocked they drafted this kid at quarterback. Yes, Joe Flacco ain't no good and he can't play anymore. And all of that said, Harbaugh's got to get fired. And there's got to be, and all of a sudden they go out and they beat the Bills 47-3 in the opening week. And at least for the next 3 days, the grass is going to smell good around here for a couple days, right?
Well, it certainly should smell good about that. I mean, as far as everything else you alluded to, I mean, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. I mean, I think certainly the Ravens have had a good reputation for a number of years, and rightfully so. And you can find all kinds of veterans that come through here and either won a Super Bowl or didn't win at all, especially here the last few years. I mean, Steve Smith got to the playoffs one time with the Ravens. I think he had a great time here. I think he relished the opportunity, but ultimately you want to win. And I think certainly this offseason speaks to a couple things. One, I think, to borrow a phrase from the Philadelphia 76ers, they've trusted the process, at least in terms of people, decision makers that they've had in place. You said they made some changes. They made some changes at the skill positions on the offensive side of the ball. Beyond that, other than Wink Martindale replacing Dean Pease, the defense is largely identical to what it was last year from a personnel standpoint. I mean, Ladarius Webb, Carl Davis, Bronson Kafusi, those are about the only guys who played at all last year that aren't on this team anymore on the defensive side. But I think the continuity, they certainly value that. We can debate that, and if the Ravens go 8-8 again this year and miss the playoffs, then we'll be talking about it in a much different light, regardless of the fact they won 47-3 in week 1. But certainly they value that continuity. I think veteran players value that a little more than young players who haven't been through it as much. And to your point, Eric Weddle, I mean, look through, some of the different guys. They've had continuity at certain positions with the Chargers and San Diego when he was there, but, they had other things that weren't as, there wasn't as much continuity. And I think veterans appreciate that a little bit more. So the continuity, and then what I mentioned, they finally recognize that you can't just keep shopping at the dollar store for your offense. You need to give Joe Flacco a little better chance to be successful. And he needs to play better, and he needs to stay healthy. And those are things that have been an issue the last few years. Some of it out of his control, and some of it he just needs to play better. Period. And he'd be the first to tell you that. But the fact that they attacked remaking this offense as aggressively as they didn't go out and give crazy contracts necessarily, and they didn't really have the cap space to do that. I mean, could they have gone out and gotten an Allen Robinson? Probably, but
at what expense? Right.
You would have been bringing in one receiver then, rather than three, or what else? What other concession might you have had to make at some point? So they brought in three guys with diversity and skill. And this is something that I've talked to people in the organization, players, coaches. They really feel that these wide receivers that they have now complement each other. And to your point, the only guy that I really point to and say maybe he's a 1,000-yard receiver is if John Brown plays all 16 games. And he hasn't done that the last couple of years, and that's why he's no longer in Arizona. But I think he has the combination of explosiveness and other skills that could make him that kind of player. But they don't need a 1,000-yard receiver if John Brown has 900 and Michael Crabtree has 800 and is a big red zone threat and big on third down. John Brown's making the big plays, and Willie Snead is effective in the slot, and Hayden Hurst comes back and can catch 40 balls for you, after he misses the first 3 or 4 games of the season, and he'll catch 4 or 5 touchdowns. And if Alex Collins rushes for 1,000 yards, and Buck Allen and Kenneth Dixon are a good change of pace. My point is, if all of these pieces fit together well like a puzzle, you don't need any one piece to be gigantic. Is it great when you have a Julio Jones or an Antonio Brown in crunch time? Absolutely, and that's still going to be a question for this team when they're playing the best team, some of the best competition in the NFL. Who's going to make that big play in crunch time? And that's not going to be something that's answered when you're playing the Buffalo Bills. But I think with the way the puzzle pieces fit, I think it fits more efficiently than it did in the past. I think there are more pieces to fit together rather than just saying, okay, well, you have Mike Wallace and you have Jeremy Maclin. Other than that, well, good luck. I think you have upwards of 4 receivers, a couple tight ends once they get Hayden Hurst back healthy. And certainly you have a more, at least there's more upside with the backfield now with Kenneth Dixon kind of subbing out Danny Woodhead, who, let's face it, wasn't Danny Woodhead anymore last year. I think there's enough potential there that even if it doesn't pop statistically, even if any one player doesn't look like a Pro Bowler, that I think they have enough guys that complement each other well that the sum of the parts is going to add up. And as I said, if they can have the league's 14th ranked offense, the league's 12th ranked offense, rather than being 29th, like they've been, 30th, 27, and just not being as efficient and productive, then I think there's a much better feeling about the potential of this football team because I think
they're not going to score 47 every week.
Yeah. I think there are very high expectations on defense. Not that they're going to hold opponents to 3 points. And hey, A.J. Green's going to be a different animal than anyone else they were trying to cover without Jimmy Smith on Sunday against Buffalo. But I think the expectations are really high for the defense to be great. Certainly they need to finish. Certainly they need to clean up the lapses that they had last year. But keep in mind, this team also had 3 shutouts and led the NFL in takeaways last year. That matters. And tell me all you want about schedule and all those different things. I mean, it still matters. So potential's there. I think there is a higher ceiling now for this offense. They have to go out and do it, and they have to stay healthy. And certainly Sunday was a great first step in the right direction in both of those regards. And they need to continue it now as they go to Cincinnati and are moving forward after that.
You can find Luke at Baltimore Luke on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. We'll have some Orioles for you a little later on. We'll both be in Cincinnati on Thursday night, the Queen City, for the Ravens and the Bengals as they take full stage, and we get a little bit of a mini bye on the backside. Hopefully the Ravens can make it to 2-0. You can find us out in the bye at Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. Also had Victor Brick on the show. You can find that out in the buy at Twitter.com Audio Vault as well, talking about the John W. Brick Foundation. My 50th birthday. It's October the 14th. It's out at the Timonium Fairgrounds. Please learn more about the Wim Hof method and the weekend that they're having out there. You can find all of that up at Brick Bodies as well as at JWB. the5k.com. Also, our morning newspaper brought to you by the Maryland Jockey Club, where they are running the DeFrancis Dash later on in the month, and they are back that's this weekend, actually, and they're back on the track down at Laurel, where the Maryland Million is October the 20th. It's also on the front of our WNST morning newspaper, as well as on the front of WNST.net. The Laurel entries there for you and the Maryland Jockey Club in the expanded, beautiful sports bar they built down in Laurel for your horse racing and wagering pleasures as well. Make sure you get down to Laurel. It's beautiful down there. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Kolatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, getting you ready. Luke and I will be joining him from Cincinnati. Or hopefully the weather was better than it was in Baltimore on Sunday as well. Plenty ahead, plenty of conversation about the Bills, plenty of looks ahead at the Cincinnati Bengals this week as well. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.